Freedom Escape Short Story by JameliaAlicia. Being trapped was not something to play with or mess with. Being trapped was something to be hidden as a disguise under life's challenges. And instead, this time, the protagonist decided to bring this to light. The protagonist's name was Eve Waterwood, who lived in a fifth-floor apartment in East London. She had a dream of becoming an architect and found that being a building made her wiser in understanding the building's structure. This made her realize that in order to understand her issue, she had to address it through an architect's perspective. Eve concluded that this freedom was taken away from her when she had mental health conditions of anxiety and depression. The obsessive and compulsive thoughts made her feel like she was being controlled and there was no escape, except from her friends and family, which made her feel sane again. The walls and foundations of the buildings were personified as blocked goals and ambitions, and to break free from the walls, she had to build a strong foundation of resistance to avoid the walls from decaying and losing their connection to human interaction. Eve did not have any idea that their architect skills came into play until today, when she was by the terrace of her apartment looking out to the city of East London, and realized that each building she observed had a story to tell. A story of pedestrians and housekeepers who lived there, a story of hardships and stability made through the pipes and bricks of each wall. Eve made a haven out of her building, which she created to be her home, and had no choice but to get used to the cracks she saw between the walls, and either added a picture frame or painted over it to avoid the house losing its authenticity. The house was a contemporary filled with Eve's love of ornaments perfectly placed on tables and in cupboards. The chairs and cushions were evenly positioned to match the interior of the white walls. Eve hummed a tune to herself and swiftly cooked her signature dish on low heat on the stove. Eve was making spaghetti bolognese and was excited about the dish she would be sharing with herself. Perhaps the skill of an architect was only needed when arranging things in order and making sure the house told stories through the way it moved against the seasons. Maybe a bit too mainstream, she was old-fashioned and believed the seasons should be paused and left for the visitor to interpret, because no one liked a house that was clean and refined in its details. A palace of freedom was welcomed with warm, gentle hugs and also welcomed with the silence of questioning. She invited both into her life, exchanged with positive vibes, and allowed time to heal the wounds that resurfaced. She found freedom by making her house the architecture of her creation, and making drawings that were detailed to the eye, and mathematical logics that made her modern Renaissance rebirth. I chose, and that was when fate unfolded. That was the mystery behind a drawing of a building or the interior of a room. It didn't matter when to be creative. It mattered when to master the art of logic, because people were more intrigued by the mastery than the creative picture. That's what made her take the leap of faith through intelligence and daily problem-solving. It didn't matter. "I do" was the last words mentioned to her friend Betty on the phone about the architecture of her previous pieces Eve designed for the new year ahead. The words exchanged between her friend were about loyalty and trust earned through intellectual conversations about pieces that took her back to university days as a student. With this opportunity, she created a haven of writing.